Greetings again. This is Dr. Bill Wyatt with the American Orthodontic Society, and I want to discuss something. I've had several people wondering what appliance and what things do we use in doing the orthodontics. If you've got something that works for you, just use it. But if you haven't and you want to use the things that we use, it's pretty simple stuff that I use. And so I'm using a very simple bracket, a single space bracket. It's just one bracket, and the inner bracket space is greater where you've got a rather narrow bracket in there, but the rotation ability is not as good. Now, if you have the single bracket with the little wings on the side that you can bend up or down, and you can rotate the tooth with that, that works fine. It's easier to rotate. I quit using them back before we didn't have sealant that was good enough, and you get food under these wings and you get decalcified areas. Now we have excellent sealants, so you can put the sealant over the whole upper of the surface of the tooth, and you put the bracket on top of the sealant, and if they can't brush under there, the sealant lasts for years, but where they brush, the sealant will wear off after a while. So you can use those brackets with the wings, and I want to kind of get into this and show you what bracket exactly that we use, and I'm going to get over here on this. Now this little single bracket, it has a vertical slot in it, and you can use that, but you've got a space right here, and then you have a space over on, you have your bracket space over here. Now the base of the bracket doesn't count as a space, so your space comes all the way from this side of the bracket to the other side of the bracket. And now you can make a bigger bend in the wire. In other words, you can add more torque to it, or more twist, or whatever you want to do, or in or out, or up or down in that bracket, since you have a greater space. Whereas if you've got twin brackets, your space is reduced considerably. And if you're using a real big wire, I use an 018 bracket, what I call a 018. It's an 18 thousandths bracket. What it is the bracket would be something like this. This is 18 thousandths here, and this is 25 thousandths. So it's an 1825, the 1825 slot in the bracket. Now, most of the time we use rectangular arch wires to do the finishing work of this, and the rectangular arch wire that I use is an 017, 17 thousandths instead of 18 thousandths. In other words, I've got a clearance in here of about a 1,000th of a millimeter, whatever it's measured with, and that reduces the torque that's in the bracket by about 4 degrees, so you don't have quite as much torque. So in some of them I have to add more torque than I want. Now, this whole thing of torque is something people really don't understand fully. They think they'll put straight wire appliances in there that's got a certain amount of torque that would, if you put a bracket in there exactly that size of that slot, then you would end up with that exact torque. But the problem is, when your tooth is out of place and you've got the bracket is the right torque, when you put the wire in there, you've got a lot of torque to correct it. But as the tooth gets closer and closer to where it should go, the amount of force that the wire produces there goes down too. and you get there close to where you want to be, and it looks like it'll never go there. So what I'm proposing, you give more torque to it and bring it up there where you want it, and then take it out of the tooth. Now I've graded cases for the International Association and also the American Orthodontics, and are trying to pass the boards and everything. And there's very few people understand that. They think if I put the slot that's got the correct torque in it and bring it up there, it'll line up like that. But the closer you get to where it ought to be, the force from the wire to the tooth reduces and reduces and reduces, and when you get almost where you ought to be, it may take forever, there it seems like. And if you took the arch wire and added torque to it, too much torque or more than you'd want, you can move the tooth right there. I've had a guy that was head of the doggone orthodontic school here in Texas came up and said, oh, it may be torqued so bad you can't get it torqued. That is ridiculous. You can torque a tooth any amount you want to do, and at any age you want to torque somebody. So this is ridiculous, this idea that you can't move the teeth after a certain age. I don't want to get touched up in that argument. Now, I like a small bracket, and you can see these brackets taking this, and the arch wire size is small, and I can torque faster with a smaller wire than I can with a heavier wire. And we use the Big Daddy on the outside till we can do anything with it as far as bigness is concerned, and then I work with a smaller wire to do that. Now the brackets we use are this little sign right here, and it's got a vertical slot in it, and let me go through and show you. Now on our molar teeth, the upper bands, we have 3 slots. Got a headgear slot here that we use for the Big Daddy arch wire, and this slot is where the conventional wire goes. Let me erase that, and the conventional wire would go right in here. This is omega. We run it in there. Now this one is for lip bumpers or intruding arches. You'd come out of here with something like this, and you'd have to turn it up the other direction to get to tight this out. You'd have to come like this, and then you come up here and you tighten that spring. You tighten the spring up as you want to intrude the teeth from that. It fits in the other arch. This wire can be converted, and you can have a wire off. The 2 bands don't have to be the same. So we convert this tube right here. Down on the bottom we just have 2 slots for that. Let me get on into showing more of this. Now this is from the other side of the mouth. Maybe you can see the omegas. We tie all of our arch wires back. We can cut them off where we want them there, and we tie one side and come over and tighten the other side, and you can actually blanch the tissue if you want to move the teeth together. I don't care if they say, well, they don't slide in the arch wire. They go, you tighten them up and they'll slide in the arch wire. Or if they're pinched down so tight they can't slide, you better take a little tiny screwdriver, go in there and twist it a little bit and open that bracket up like that. Now down on the bottom where you may want to change the arch wire because you can't get the bands exactly right, when you get the occlusal surface right, then you alter this band, this arch wire from here to go into there. So when you make a bend back here, you can't slip it through a slot, through a groove, so you have to convert it to a bracket and then tie it down. So these are some things that you have to do if you're using the brackets that we use. Excuse me. Now, these brackets have little vertical slots in them, you see, right like that. Now, if you come to a spot where I'm going to have to pause this for a second, and let me get over here. Okay, we're back again. These have little vertical slots where you can put hooks that you hook on to where you can put elastics in there. On the top, we put a little cleat back here. You can attach things to the inside. On the bottom, you've got a little lingual button on that. And you've got a long inner bracket space. Now, if you stick one of these brackets on a tooth that's rotated, like you would really like to rotate this tooth down a little more and turn this one out, then you put your bracket slightly off center toward the rotated side, like you want to bring this corner of this tooth out some, then you slide your bracket over this direction. If you want this to turn in this direction, you can put a little plastic wedge under it here, and that'll push this down and make this rotate, and you tie it from that direction. Okay. Now let's go on to, and the same thing on the bottom over here. This is a blown up naturally size of the tooth. We'll try this again. Now, if you're trying to straighten up, say, a tooth like this, I'm going to have to get back on my little marking pen here, and if you're trying to rotate it and the tooth is in on this side over here and you want to pull it around, the arch wire will not fit tight on this side. So we put wire underneath it here, and then we press in on the wire over here so that wire will have a slight bend in it, and that'll help bring this side back out again. So we wire it in instead of putting a little rubber band or little plastic O-rings around the brackets like that. And normally this does all right. Or if you want this to come out, bring it out this way, you can put a wedge under it, a little plastic wedge, and rotate it that way. Now here we drop this slot. We have some soft metal material. You drop in here and bend the end up, and now you can hook an elastic to this, or you can put it in from this side and have the ears down here and bend this wire over up there, and you can hook to the bottom of the tooth. So you can hook any way. And I'm not selling any brackets. Nobody's ever given me a set of them or anything about it, but I can do most anything you can do with any bracket. A bracket is just a device that you bond onto the tooth right here, and you can take that same bracket and you can do most anything you can come up with on that. It's just grabbing a hold of the tooth. And I know people spend a lot of money trying to come up with a perfect bracket, but nobody's ever done one that I know of right now. So we'll just go on from there. Here is the back side. We make this omega that goes in here, and I bring the omega out to the side. Since this tooth is more narrow than the molar, and now the wire is coming on and comes out like that back here, and you bring it around here. If you have a headgear, you slide it in that slot. if you put no lip bumper or something, or an intruding wire, you would go in this one, and your regular arch wire goes in the middle one down here. Now, on the bottom, on the bottom arch, your bands, you never can be exactly, know exactly what to do to the bands themselves. And so a lot of times you have to adjust your arch wire to that. So if your band or the tooth is off size, you come out and then you bend the wire in like that, or you go up or you go down to keep the incisal edge of the molar teeth in line out here. You may go in or out or up or down with it. And now you have to convert this slot that is as a tube. You have a thing, you peel this tube off right here, and now this has to be tied in as same as a bracket out here in this area to make this thing work. So we go on from that point. And this is where if you're up above, we don't put anything back on the second molar up here. You just come out, you cut this thing off, and you have to sometimes smooth it down a little bit so it doesn't hook the person. And now this is a tie that we go around and tie this back. And you can push here with your director and push this and tighten as much as you want to, but you tighten one side where you want it, and then you go over and tighten the other side. But this one you wouldn't push it all the way in there. You tighten from one side only. Really, I made a little error there. Now here, if we're coming through and this, it would go on out this way, so we put the wire over to the side. Now we got the incisal edges of these teeth, and the upper molar tooth fits in to there, kind of like that. And that puts these teeth, lines these teeth up, so we have to vary this. But when you make a bend here, you've got to convert this bracket right here. Now on the bottom we put little buttons, and sometimes we'll put these O-rings on them to keep from rubbing and irritating the tongue when we use them. That's the other side of the mouth now. And there is like you're going up with this one, and then you go down and go in here. So we have to make a couple of bends in this, and then we ligature this part in the wire. And I can take these little simple brackets, and I don't mean to lower the value of these new brackets. They're trying to come out with something, but so far I feel like I could do anything that anybody does with these fancy brackets now, and do it just as good. So I better not fuss on that very much. Now there it is, bringing it back to the second molar. So that's pretty much the bracket and the bands that we use. And if you are dissatisfied with the ones you're using, go ahead. But I think an 018 slot is better than any other slot. Like you'd have a 18 thousandths. Oh, I'm gonna have to get me back on my wire. You have it's 18 thousandths in 1/018 slot in this dimension, and 25 thousandths in this dimension here. And I usually use, instead of an 18 to 5 wire, that would just barely get in here. I use a 17.25 to do nearly everything we do with them, realizing that we reduce the amount of torque that this wire will give you, and so we have to add extra torque to correct it. Thanks for watching, and I'm going to close up, and I hope you learned something from this. Thank you again.